The Yorubaman shouldn't be the face of oppression. These are the fears of the Yoruba Union as they blast Tinubu and the IG of police, Ebetoku, over the arrest of Sowore. Not just the arrest of Sowore, the fears, the worries and concern of the Yoruba Union as they condemn what is considered as an oppression of Tinubu's administration, intimidation and dictatorial tendencies being expressed by Tinubu, who happens to be a Yoruba descent, has been perceived by the public and other ethnic nationalities of most recent. The incessant arrests and clampdown on the peaceful protesters who went about their civic liberty of protesting without disrupting the public peace. There was no violence, there was no destruction of properties that should have warranted, of course, the arrests and tear gassing and eventually uh, sporadic shooting of live ammunition has been reported in these incidents that led to the arrest of the late Council to Mazen Namdekan Aloy Jimako, Mazen Namdekano immediate brother, Emmanuel Kano, and several others on the allegation that they violated the court ruling prohibiting them from accessing the Asherok. And the question is, were they within the premises of Asherok before they were accosted, arrested by the Nigerian police, by the Inspector General of Police? That is the question. And eventually, people were reacting, why should Sowore be left out? Why other ethnic nationalities were apprehended and dealt with? You can imagine subjected to such level of intimidation and suppression in a supposedly democratic government, in a supposedly democratic process, in a government where even the one who presides as the president of Nigeria was a beneficiary of civic disobedience, of protest. Tinubu championed several protests, initiated several protests, instigated several protests across Nigeria, who eventually was well pronounced. As one of the analysts was reacting that, was Tinubu arrested or suppressed or intimidated in such a manner? Now, the position of the Yoruba Union as the blast Tinubu Ebotoko, the IG of police, who should have retired under due process or normal circumstances, yet being retained for obvious reasons or personal or political reasons. They are saying, you are now making a Yoruba man to be the face of oppression, which is a clear reality, a true events and happenings. The northern political elites considers Tinubu as a tribal bigot, even prior to his emergence as the president of Nigeria. But he have confirmed them to be true, more true in the last 2 years of his administration, which recently they came to say the Tinubu's style and administration is more or less running a federation, a Yoruba federation, and no longer a Republic of Nigeria federation that comprises other ethnic nationalities, discarding the federal character principles and the rest of that, doctrine and the rest of that. Doing whatever he feels, of course, is will protect his interests and the rest of them, this jettisoning the nationality or the federation's uh, character of federal capital character principles that see to the distribution, equal distributions of resources and electoral positions and appointments. He has about, if I'm not mistaken now, if it is not more, 48 ministerial positions, and Nigeria is about 36 states, with including federal capital territory. Yet, the entire southeastern region has only 2 ministers against the provision of the federal character, which presupposes that every state federating unit has the right to produce at least one ministers. But was such complied with? Absolutely not. Under the watch of a man who projected himself as a Democrat, he protested, calling for the rights of women of the people must be respected. We saw how Jonathan was messed up. I mean, was called names and the rest of them. Yet, as a sitting president, Jonathan do not order the IG of police or the military to clamp down on any of them. They hosted their protests, their campaign of calumny, of bigotry for several days, camping in different parts of Nigeria. And yet, use all sorts of derogatory words to describe the sitting president, and yet nothing was done to them. So this Yoruba consigned, Yoruba Union consigned group is now raising that alarm that with the way Tinubu is going, the Yoruba is being seen as a face of oppression. Recall in 1997, Tinubu made a very striking statement that he did not believe in one Nigeria. Under Sani Abacha's military regime, and eventually we saw what eventually plays out. But that amounts to double standard when you are protesting because you believe you have an interest to defend. Now that it is the turn of others to protest, to express their own liberty, you tend to clamp them down with the instrumentality of the state, with the IG of police, with the DSS, or with the military and the rest of them. You clamp them down. The same thing you did during your era, and nobody came after you. Nobody usurped your right or subjugated you and your own people and allies in such a manner. Now, it is very disturbing development. Now, why do I recall to the past when the sitting president, His Excellency Ahmed Bola Tinubu, said that he did not believe in one Nigeria? Of course, he really meant what he said. If he has believed in one Nigeria, he should have respected the federal character principle. If I believe in Nigeria, he should have, of course, ensured the equitable distribution of resources and ministerial appointments. Just for crying loud. He is the president, a Yoruba descent. The Attorney General of the Federation is a Yorubaman. The Army Chief of Staff is a Yoruba. Custom immigrations, they are Yoruba people. IG of police is a Yoruba man. Attorney General of Federation is a Yoruba man. NAFDAC and the rest of them, Yoruba people. We thought that Buhari was a tribal bigot, but in Tinubu, we now discovered that Buhari was a saint compared to what Tinubu is doing now. Buhari was a saint under Buhari's administration. A Yoruba man was given three portfolios, three sensitive portfolios: Minister of Power, Minister of Housing, and Minister of Works. The former governor of Lagos State, Baba Babajide Raji, what is that his name again? Yes, the former governor of Lagos State, Fashola, Raji Fashola. And nobody was condemned such. The reason why the North, the Fulanis are crying today, that Tinubu sidelines, intentionally sideline everyone, even the most sensitive positions that has been controlled by the North was relieved of them and we are sent to a Yoruba man. So from what we can see now, it is very clear that Tinubu is running the Yoruba Federation and using the entire instrument of the state, believing to have been under his control and the control of his fellow Yoruba descent to oppress other regions and ethnic nationalities. This is how people are beginning to perceive that, which is a confirmation or a testament to his position being expressed in 1925 years ago that he did not believe in one Nigeria. Because if you believe in Nigeria, what you would do is to embark on issues, on programs, to ensure equity, fairness, and equal distributions of the Commonwealth resources, assets, and liabilities. Indeed, he did not believe in one Nigeria. But 25 years later, of course, has opportunity to have proof people he critiques otherwise, but eventually he played into the trap. Which means even his position 25 years ago has not changed about Nigeria. He has no confidence in other ethnic nationality that forms the basis for which the continued existence of Nigeria could be predicated on the basis of justice, equity, and fairness. So, unfortunately, that is what it is becoming, that the Yoruba man is becoming the face of oppression. As it's been perceived even by a House of Representatives in the person of Honorable Agota, who said that it appears that some group of Yorubas are now declaring a new civil war between the Igbos and the Yorubas. By the way, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, apparent injustice is being handled by a sitting president who is a Yoruba extraction, by Attorney General of the Federation who is a Yoruba, by the presiding judge, Justice Jason Motos, who is a Yoruba extraction, by the prosecuting councils, the members of the prosecuting councils, drafted by the same government, is a Yoruba extractions, descent. Now recall, recently, NFI accused the government of running a Yoruba federation and no longer, of course, a Nigerian federation. Because you cannot tell me that the entire over 240 or 50 ethnic nationalities, that the only people qualified to run a government that is not a sectional government is to only appoint, nominate in sensitive positions your kinsmen, which Buhari did it, but not to this extent, not to this level. Yeah, Buhari did it, but not to this level, which is raising concerns now. If there's any ethnic nationality that sponsors protests, either by way of press release, or press writing, and the rest of them, these are Yoruba people. They fought virtually every other government that's not of Yoruba descent. Of course, there are other people who I must accord that respect. They are not biased, they are deep tribalized. And the likes of Sowore, the likes of Dele Farotimi, and a handful of others who do not believe in injustice, who criticize and condemn any act of injustice being expressed, regardless of whosoever is there. They have Yoruba descent and do not support such level of injustice or perceived injustice being expressed under Tinubu's administration. You were once a beneficiary of this, a convener of several protests and the rest of them sponsors of several protests. To the point of calling a sitting president a drunk. And nothing was done. Of course, Jonathan never went after anyone because he is a Republican, a Democrat to the core. But here is Tinubu, who claims to be a Democrat. And some people will say, why am I always punching up? But these are factual. These are realities. Did they say he never believed in one Nigeria? Of course, the records are there. Unlike a Fulani descent, in the person of Yaradua of blessed memory. I mean, Yaradua is a great man. He transcends tribe, race, and generation. He's a great man. I, being an Igbo man, celebrate this man because of his honesty, his sincerity, his open-mindedness to embrace everyone. For me, Yaradua was the best president Nigeria ever had. Yaradua was the best president. Unfortunately, he never lasted. He never lasted. There are speculations that they allegedly did away with him or whatever he suffered and eventually gave up the ghost. He is the only president, the only Nigerian president who meant well for the people. He is the only one. I'm not talking of Jonathan and the rest of them. There are too much extravagance and indecisiveness on his part, and the rest of no other president in the history of Nigeria since independence could be compared to Umaru Yar'Adua. Is a great man. Of course, people around him attested to that. His managerial skills, his approach to resolving issues and providing lasting solutions in the interest of national integration and coherence was a top notch. despite the pressures coming from Obasanjo and the rest of them who may want to subject him to their own political interests and the rest of it. He went against them. He stepped on toes. For the first time, a price of fuel that went high dropped in the history of Nigeria. Under Tinubu's administration, fuel price have increased more than, would I say, 30 times, from 180 or 180 something that is used to be. Go and price the fuel now. It have increased astronomically, more than 1,001%. The same thing goes to every other essential commodities. Essential commodities is not out of the reach of an average Nigerian worker that takes home 70,000 minimum wage, which for me invariably is nothing but a killing wage, because you barely can survive with such. It's a killing wage comparing with the economic state and the rest of inflation. Transportation alone, we got off the tire, what is 70,000 compared to this? It won't even be enough for a week or two. That is the level of oppression, of course, Nigerians have been subjected to under Tinubu's administration. It is very unfortunate. We've seen the same Tinubu using media propagandas to silence and reduce the credibility of other ethnic, other governments of other ethnic nationality, to the point he even fought against his own kinsmen, Obasanjo, the rest of them. We saw the feud, of course, between them that led to Obasanjo even playing the same game of oppression, demanding for an extension of the third term. And when he saw that that could not prevail, eventually he began to oppress his own other who resisted such level of injustice. See, the Yorubaman, he went after them. So what we are discussing should not be something strange, unusual, if we can trace the history of events and happenings. Insatiable quest for power, to retain power, to as if they are leaving power, they become irrelevant. That tendency of striking a balance, equitable distributions of power and opportunities is not there. The felt threatened by that, just as Obasanjo did. He might be behaving now as a saint, but people understood his antecedents and the way he used the instrumentality of force to oppress people during his regime dispensation, which even fought, he withheld the local government allocations coming to the state government of Lagos State, and eventually we all saw all these things and people condemned it. But sadly, the same person who resisted that is becoming more worse than any other person. Now, when we go through the history and antecedents of the Yorubas, of most recent, we've seen the case of Operation Wetie between Akintola and Awolowo, of course, contending for supremacy, who controls the soul of the Western region and the rest of them. Some Akintola was more or less being backed by the northern oligarchs, forming alliance just for political interests and economic interests, and the rest of them, which culminated into another bloody civil, another of course, crisis that engulfed the entire West, leading to the first military coup plot that eventually fed after a counter coup. Yes, it's been reported then, uh, before then, the Eastern region were enjoying relative peace and progress. The North was in serenity and enjoying their own progress and development. But within the West, there is rancor, hatred, bigotry, killing in such a way that people's houses were burned, people were killed, there were rivals within the same Yoruba people. It appears the tides of oppression, subjugation, and excessive quest for power and greed have not left the region. Now, let's go back to the history. The longest intertribal war was fought by the Yorubas, starting from 1820 to 1893, which is within the span of 73 years. 73 years. Among this period, the, the Kirijiri War, which is between Osun and Ibadan, Ekiti and the rest of them, which even today, there's one time we are sourcing for house and the rest of them, some properties. They say, do not give this to, he's an Ekiti man, don't give him. He's an Odo man, don't give him. So that same trend, threat of disunity and rancors is still being kept, is still being nursed even today. That the longest war within the Yoruba tribe happens to be the longest civil war or tribal war fought in the history of the world. It lasted for 16 good years. 16 good years. There was uninterrupted war, battle. Of course, that left several regions within the Yoruba region desolate up to today. If I have traversed several regions of the Yoruba, of course, Osun State, where I served, of course, during my one year compulsory service, and of course, Oyo Ibadan. I have also traversed Ekiti, partly Ogun State, and of course, what else is left? You see that these regions are underdeveloped. If you have to compare, of course, the proximity to the Federal Capital Territory, which is Lagos, former Federal Capital Territory, that was that lasted for over 30 years. One should have supposedly believed that there should have been impact of the proximity of the Federal Capital Territory to those suburb regions. Which invariably implies, by my own opinion, is not binding on anyone based on my opinion and analysis, that the Yorubas have not recovered from this war, for this intra-tribal war. Because that is not meaningful, concrete development to reintegrate other Yoruba regions in terms of development. Well, I stand to be corrected of recent. I don't know what is really going on, but there are still signs and, of course, traces of such disunity. Though it was reported that that was the longest tribal war within the Yoruba race. And what was the reason for this war? The context of supremacy, of we want to lord it over to you, we want to oppress you, we want to remain relevant, we want economic and political power and dominance. And these people say we are equity, we are learned and we are more informed than the rest of them. People say we are the main Yorubas and these are not your main Yorubas and the rest of them. History has it. You go and find out for yourself. That is not my area of interest. Now, if eventually Nigeria breaks up, the North might possibly survive over time because they have common ideology and could easily blend, having a forging a common front. Of course, the Biafrans and the eastern regions already have that ideology and shared values among them. But the case is with the Yorubas. Survive over time with this current wave of supposed or alleged oppressions being repeated. Will liberality and equitable distribution of wealth and resources be threat? This case of the winner takes all and Babosokpe syndrome might hamper, of course, such liberality or freedom of expression and aspiration. Well, that is left for that for another day. But our focus is on these concerns raised by the Yoruba Union, cautioning Tinubu that a Yoruba man should not be the face of oppression. You know, under Ahmed Bola Tinubu, the overwhelming trial or verdict of the appeal court, upheld by the Supreme Court, the president can never jump bail. An overwhelming court injunction verdict was ruled in favor of Mazen Nandekan on the 13th of October 2022. Besides the one ruled by the High Court of Abia State and Enugu, slamming Nigeria about 1 billion naira as for compensation for Mazen Nandekan, as such was not complied with. And it should be considered as a contempt of the court, the content of the law. And you are now seeking a state of execution whereby you have not complied to the subsistence verdict given. And you should have complied before you could take or consider a state of apply for the state of execution and the rest of them. Such was not kept, which is an evident gross violations of the procedural, of course, processes and undertakings. It's a very disturbing development, honestly, which every responsible humanity must be concerned about this. What does the future holds for the Yorubas? Because when you are silenced over a prevailing oppression because you are from such ethnic nationalities, whatever goes around comes around. The North are watching and observing closely whatever is playing out. Nothing forever lasts the same way. Of course, what goes around comes around, and they might be considering, and the Easterners are perceiving that this level of conspiracy, even with the demolition of Igbo properties, predominant Igbo properties, and the rest of them, which Igbos have been widely affected. With whatever is going on, people are reading meanings, and you never can tell. Of course, you might think you have your way today, and the rest of them. Tomorrow is there. Nobody could ascertain what might play out. And power is transient. Possibly this could have informed the reason why the Yoruba Union is blasting the president, the IG of police, and the rest of them to apply caution that is they are not projecting the Yoruba race and the Yoruba man as the face of oppression. Which might have negative implications. It doesn't matter if you don't agree with him. But the truth is the Yoruba man is in the helm of affairs. And whatever operations linked to a Yoruba man, of course, might dent the image of other innocent Yorubas. The reason why, of course, they should, of course, lend their voice as just the Yoruba Union group or whatever is doing at this particular time. Because silence might possibly be considered as consent and conspiracy, or possibly this they are working in synergy and the rest of them is a way of applying caution or calling the attention of the Tinubu's administration and his instruments of the state or those manning the very different parts, such as security institutions and the rest of them, to apply caution. Because I strongly believe if this were to be done to the Yorubas or by other ethnic nationalities, the entire media space would have been aflame. The entire internet would have been agog. You would have seen protests, petitions upon petitions, and the rest of them. But those who petition, the likes of Tunde Bakare, the likes of Wole Soyinka, excuse me, and the rest of them, they have gone under their shell. And of course, nobody's talking, as if they no longer exist within the same framework, within the same political and economic system. They once criticized, condemned, called names, convened protests, and the rest of them. The world is watching. Even the clergymen organized 1 million protests against Jonathan and the rest of them. And then I'm saying that Jonathan era was hell, and now they are living in the full paradise. Or they are no longer abreast with the current realities, or perhaps it is now they have to keep quiet and go back and sit down because possibly they might be direct beneficiaries of this flawed system. Nobody can tell. But the level of conspiracy of silence suggests otherwise, and that you can't take from the people. Who have been monitoring events and happenings of recent, of course, linking it to the past, trying to connect the dots and the rest of them. People, of course, could make their own conclusions based on the current antecedents. So whatever happens, of course, one thing is certain, that power is transient, and whatever you use that within the allowed time, of course, you will be held accountable and responsible for that. That is just the case. But you can't be preaching democracy or rule of law while you are the gross defaulter. You also flout the same court's rulings, court orders, the content of the court by not adhering fully due compliance to the court verdict, and you want to benefit from the same court. Now, let me read this chapter before I wrap it up. And of course, if you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for this to this channel. Turn on the notification button so that you can get our videos once it's been uploaded. And we might crave your, of course, indulgence. You have the right to express yourself via the comment section. Don't forget to use such opportunity. It's a weapon, of course, and an instrument to relate to us what you feel concerning this subject matter, and of course, a possible review in subsequent editions and what we needed to add or subtract regarding this update. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, a like for this video as you're watching. Now, the Yoruba people of Western Nigeria fought the longest tribal war. The internet has the record. It's not based on figment of imaginations. The 73-year period of intertribal warfare among the Yoruba people refers to as a series of conflicts from 1820 to 1893. The most famous of these was the 16-war Kiriji War, which lasted between 1877 to 1893, also known as the Ekiti Parapo War, which was a major civil war that ultimately ended the prolonged period of conflict duration. That is quite interesting. The overall period of continuous civil strife lasted for 73 years, from 1820 to 1893. The records are there. Key conflicts. The, key, the Kiriji War was final and most significant of these conflicts. The combatants. The Kiriji War was fought majorly between the rising powers of Ibadan and the combined forces of the Ekiti and Ijesha people. Do you get it? Which are prominent Yoruba, of course, clans, or whatever you call it. The significance, despite the prolonged and brutal nature of the war, prolonged and brutal nature of the war. It is prolonged and brutal. You know what that means? The Yoruba people remain united as a single tribe. The Kiriji War, which ended in a stalemate, is considered one of the longest intertribal war in the world and marked the end of the conflict. Well, in unquote, it is quite interesting. Let's have your own take regarding this development and possibly what you think about this update. Is Yoruba becoming a face of oppression within the Nigerian political sphere? Let's have your own take. If you're a Yoruba man, do you subscribe to that position expressed by the Yoruba Union, blasting or condemning such excesses being expressed by Tinubu's administration, the IG of police, and other, of course, instruments of the state? Thanks for watching.